Would you mind taking us back to the day of the accident and just telling us what happened on that day?
Well, he had a local builder that he was quite friendly with, was along, and there was going to be renewing a valley gutter in the actual shed. And they looked at it in the morning and there was a wee bit of frost on the shed, and they decided they would do it later on when the rime had came off. And I was actually Christmas shopping with my wife in Edinburgh at the time when it happened, or I might well have been along here, and we got a phone call to say that brother had an accident. What's he done? You know, we come home, and that was the biggest shock of my life. Like, there's not enough people on farms now. You know, you're trying to do what there used to be 5 or 6 people used to do, and you know, there's nobody there if something goes wrong to help you. You know, if somebody was there when brother fell through the roof, you know, he might still be here now.
Unfortunately, accidents like Hugh's are all too common on British farms, something that the Health and Safety Executive are desperate to change, and they've come up with a unique campaign in an attempt to do so, using these.
They're called Promise Nots and have been sent out to farmers across the country.
Well, this campaign is to highlight the tragedy of the deaths in the farming community. The farming community lost 455 people in the last 10 years, fatalities that could have been avoided. And the idea of this promise knot is to promise to come home safely at night. Just to concentrate the mind to think, maybe I shouldn't do that activity without ensuring it's without risk. Some people think that it's patronising to them, but at least it's getting them talking. And so they're saying, well, this is patronising. I've been in farming for 50 years. What a cheek they've got sending me this. But if it stops one person dying, then it's been worth every penny that has been spent.
No one can even begin to imagine how hard it is to speak about your brother and about the day of the accident. Why do you think it's so important then to speak to us, to tell your story?
Well, after I was actually phoned to ask about to do this interview, I sat down and thought about all the people I know who's been killed, lost limbs, or been injured, and it's actually quite horrific. And well, if I can help one person to stop and think, I think I'm doing some good.
How much of an impact, I mean, how devastating was the accident on your family?
It was hugely devastating. You know, and Mum and Dad, no parent should have to bury their child, no parent. And it brought probably the rest of my brothers closer together because of it, but it's a horrible way to do it. You know, you should never have to go through this, never.
Walking is one of the most popular activities for visitors taking holidays in Scotland. And last year, over 5 million trips taken by UK tourists involved some sort of walking. There's no end to the variety of walks available on our doorstep. But Sarah has been stepping out to retrace the footsteps of walkers from our past.
Newtonmore calls itself the walking centre of Scotland, with lots of walks within easy reach. But because of the difficult terrain and the length of journey, getting to the Highlands wasn't always easy. And then, one dramatic period in Scottish history literally changed the map and the way we walk through the landscape.
Writer Ian Mitchell is guiding me through the stories of just a few of Scotland's walkers, and this week we're following the footsteps of the Jacobites.
What's the relevance of this road we're on?
Well, this road and the bridge we're going across here too is one of the best maintained parts of the military road system built by General Wade after the 1715 rebellion. It meant that the soldiers could move about the area much quicker, know where they were, be supplied much better. Paradoxically, to begin with, they were of more advantage to the Jacobites, so people point out that initially the waged roads helped the Jacobites in the 45.
The Jacobite army that assembled at Glenfinnan in 1745 had a huge walk ahead of them. They used the newly built wade roads to attempt to bring Bonnie Prince Charlie back to the throne.
Between 15 and 20 miles a day seems to be the average route that any army in history can take, pushing a bit further to 25 miles maybe in a forced march. The Jacobites had a particular problem though, that because they were an irregular army, they were not very well supplied in terms of provisions. They were very, very fast over short distances, the Jacobites, but over the longer period they were slowed down by this irregularity of their supplies.
It's well known that an army marches on its stomach, but it also marches on its feet, and shoes were much in demand.
What we find is that the need for footwear becomes a constant theme of the Jacobite advance and retreat. They made enormous requests of provisions of footwear. 5,000 pairs of shoes they demanded from Glasgow in 1746 in the retreat. So they were using shoes and they were wearing them out fairly quickly because over the whole campaign they marched an enormous distance.
After 8 months on the road, the Jacobites had travelled hundreds of miles and were then defeated here at Culloden at their weakest stage. But what's more remarkable is what Bonnie Prince Charlie did next.
He then spent over 4 months wandering the Highlands and Islands of Western Scotland, being pursued by the Redcoats, and in most of that time he was actually being pursued on foot over incredibly difficult terrain, often sleeping in caves, sleeping on the tops of mountains. So although he hadn't done much walking up to the point of Culloden afterwards, he probably covered, in that time I would say easily 400 or 500 miles on foot. This was a man who had other people to tie his shoes for him and things. That was the ritual of kingship in those days. But he certainly, if he wasn't tough, he toughened up during his time of flight.
The ill-fated march of the Jacobites led to one of the biggest defeats in Scottish history. After the uprising, the Highlands were opened up with a programme of road and bridge building. Today, most of those routes are main roads. But for the true romantic, you can still follow in the footsteps of a Jacobite.
If you'd like to march along the Jacobite route,